Happy Friday, March 18th. Welcome to the Just Baseball show. I was going to say the Just Baseball stove because the hot stove continues to run rampant. Look at that spin zone, messing up my own grammar, then going straight into it. What's up, Aram? We're about to talk Freddie Freeman. We're about to talk Chris Bryant, but there's a lot of small moves that we got to cover. And then, of course, we're going to continue to speculate on Carlos Correa and Trevor Story because it's fun. And we still have no idea where they're going because they remain unsigned. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. I got to deal with Marlins Twitter, just losing their collective minds because the Marlins haven't done anything yet. But I feel worse for Craig Mish because they're just hounding him like he can make the deals happen. Other than that, good, dude. I'm excited for some of these final shoes to drop. Now we got a little bit more rumor sprinkled in there as well with Cedric Mullins potentially. The Orioles are listening again. I don't think it's going to happen, but you never know. I think, Brian Reynolds looks like it's trending backwards in terms of them trading him. I think it makes way more sense for the Orioles to trade Mullins. So that'd be a fun little deal too, potentially.
Let's talk about the Orioles as a whole, because interestingly enough, they are in on Carlos Correa. So we will talk about the Orioles a little bit later in the pod when we talk about Carlos Correa, because I got to tell you what the Orioles have been up to. So let's just start straight away. We're going to go over a lot of the smaller moves, then of course break into the bigger ones. But small moves are still good moves. And I think a really good move off the bat that happened this morning. Well, we're recording on Thursday, of course, releasing on Friday. So Thursday morning, Matt Boyd signed with the San Francisco Giants to a $5.2 million deal. I like it. Matt Boyd, another just arm who's eat innings his entire career. He goes to the San Francisco Giants. The Giants have been doing this, just picking up low-key type arms that they're going to plug straight into the rotation and get the most out of. This is a guy who I know he has a career 4.96 ERA, but he's coming off a really strong season where he pitched to a 3.89 ERA over 15 starts. Doesn't it feel like, Aram, if Matt Boyd had signed with the Colorado Rockies, for example, or the Arizona Diamondbacks, or another team like that, I don't know if you love the move, but him to the Giants feels right.
Of course, right? I mean, he's coming off one of his better years. The Giants see something they like. And honestly, though, he's had some stretches where he was pretty darn good, especially you look at 2019, where, the ERA isn't sparkling at 4.56, but struck out a lot of dudes. I think it was something along almost 11.6 Ks per 9 innings. He never walks a lot of guys. And as we know with the Giants, they don't need guys going 7 innings, 8 innings. They need 5-inning quality start, 6-inning quality start maximum, and their bullpen will take it from there. We saw it with Alex Wood. They got more out of him. I really think that he's just going to be another solid depth arm there. And he's a high floor guy, in my opinion, because you kind of know at the worst, you're getting a high 4s ERA. I know in the shortened 2020 season, he struggled, but I'm expecting him to be just a solid arm for them. And again, they know what they're looking for. So he seems to just kind of fit the bill.
The Giants have picked up 3 arms this offseason. Carlos Rodon, 2 years, $44 million. Alex Cobb to a 2-year deal. And now Matt Boyd to a 1-year deal. I love every single move that Farhan Zaidi makes. He is a genius, and I believe in it. I just believe in the Giants, and I think they're going to be better than the Padres this year. And I know the Dodgers added Freddie Freeman, and we're, of course, going to talk about that. And 109 wins is not likely, but I still think this team is a lock to finish over 90. When you and I were speaking a little bit earlier, probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, before the flurry of free agency happened, before they got Rodon, before now they got Matt Boyd, those aren't sparkling moves, but are you confident in the Giants' ability to win 90 games next year, or are you still a little bit lower on them?
It's funny. I think with the vulnerability of the Padres, there's a little bit more room there. Part of the reason why I thought they would be a bit of a downer, or at least take a step back from last year, is I thought, I think the Padres were going to take that step forward. I haven't really loved anything the Padres have done. And unfortunately now Tatis is out for the first 3 months of the season. So now I think the Giants kind of see that. And there's an opportunity for them to right now, again, just nestle their way in as that number 2 team. I still think that they have some ground to make up. I think Alex Cobb is going to have to be that Alex Cobb from last year. And we're going to have to see a lot of those offensive pieces, do better than they were last year. If Mike Yastrzemski's got to be more like 2020 Mike Yastrzemski, not last year. But I wouldn't be shocked at all, right? I definitely think that there's a good shot, and the Padres are leaving it open now a little bit. I'm very curious to see what they do. I know we talked about it on the last episode. Like, we might be seeing Preller waiting to strike. So if they don't strike, yeah, I'm with you. I think I could walk it back and say the Giants might be closer to 90. But if the Padres make some good moves and convince us that they want to be that number 2 team, which I know they do, I still think Giants number 3. So it's going to be interesting to see how this offseason plays out.
And the Giants lose Alex Dickerson, but then add Jock Peterson. So they also signed Jock Peterson as well. They're just smart. They're savvy. And I think they're going to be right in the thick of it when it comes to playoff time again. And it'll just be interesting. Are they, in fact, better than the Padres? I'm still in the boat where the Padres have to prove it while the Giants have. So let's just move on to our next deal. Daniel Norris is a Chicago Cub. That's something.
That happened. Another thing that happened, Archie Bradley is an Angel. That happened. He's a good bullpen arm, though. At times, he can be. Well, what I like about the Bradley pickup is this. He's not pitching the 8th inning for them.
He's not even pitching the 7th.
No. Ryan Tepera now added in there, which I know you were going to get to next, but that's a guy that's going to be pitching like later in the ball games, and he's not even closing out ball games for them. Like, they have a really good bullpen, and that's what the Angels needed to do. It's so hard to just build a rotation through free agency. You just can't do it. And we know that they didn't have the prospects really. The trade market is brutal if you're going to try to trade for a pitcher, and they don't have the prospects for that either. So for them, I think they went and got a couple arms, which we know who they went out and got. They got Syndergaard. They got some other dudes. It's going to help them a little bit. But now with that bullpen, you're shortening the starts. Another team that may only need 5 innings from their guys, right? Reed Detmers doesn't need to go 6 or 7. He can give you 5 innings of 3 runs. You could have one of the best offenses of baseball and a bullpen now that can really take over from the 6th inning on. This could be one of the best bullpens in baseball, which is ironic because they've been atrocious. But talent-wise, I mean, Peter, this is a freaking good bullpen on paper.
Iglesias, who's a top 5 bullpen arm. Aaron Loop had an ERA near 1.0 last year. Archie Bradley, fine bullpen arm, has been really good in some years, not in others, but he's only going to be relied on a 6th inning, kind of a filler role, just one of the bullpen guys. And then the big signing, a 2-year, $14 million deal for Ryan Tepera, formerly with the White Sox, had a great year last year, really came into his own, even though he's 34, 35 years old already. But he's a really solid back-end guy, probably going to slot into the 8th inning role. And 2 years, $14 million, great value. Are you finally buying the Angels? Are you willing to jump on board with me? Because I continue to hype up this Angels team. They are so loaded across the board when it comes to offense. The starting pitching, you mentioned it. Reed Detmers is the 5. What about Noah Syndergaard? What about Jose Suarez? What about Patrick Sandoval? And then, of course, Shohei Ohtani. If this team can stay healthy, they are covered from the backup catcher all the way to the 8th bullpen arm. They have, like you said, they could have one of the best bullpens. Their starting pitching looks a lot better. They could have one of the best offenses, and they have one of the best managers in the entire sport. If this isn't the Angels' year, then when is it?
No, it'll never happen. If it doesn't happen this year, it's never happening. And I also think a big X factor for them is Michael Lorenzen. You know, they bought low on Lorenzen off a down year, but remember, Lorenzen was pitching in a very unfriendly environment in Cincinnati. The expected stats point towards him being a bit unlucky. You look at the FIP, you look at the expected ERA. Those things point towards better days ahead. And, you know, we take that with a grain of salt. But when a guy was really good in 2018, really good in 2019, good in 2020, and then bad in 2021, and all of the expected stats point towards him being a little bit better than the performance, I think that's a guy who deserves the benefit of the doubt.
Absolutely.
And I think he could be a really big X factor for them, making starts, middle relief, doing a little bit of everything. And we've seen him in all these different roles, and he wants to swing it a little bit too. So it can be Ohtani 2.0, I guess. I don't know if they're going to let him swing it, but they need him as a pitcher. And I think that's a really underrated acquisition as well, because it happened early in the year also, or in the offseason, I should say.
The thing is, they're definitely going to let him swing it. You know why? He signed with the Angels because they were the team that said he could swing it. That's the reason he wanted to go to LA.
It's a weird stipulation.
It's a weird stipulation, but he can do it. That's how much of an athletic freak he is. I mean, go look at his Instagram. I mean, he posts videos and pictures of himself in the gym. He is a freak of nature. He's got muscles on his muscles on his muscles. I think he's growing another muscle in his brain on top of it. Like, he is jacked.
That's huge. I mean, that's huge. He wants to do it all. And I think that's going to translate on the mound too. I think they want to stretch him out more. They want to use him as a starter. So being in good shape on that end of things is going to help too. Also, don't sleep on, just have to give a special shout out when we're talking about the Angels. Friend of the show, friend of Just Baseball, Anthony Mulrine. Congratulations to him. He was just on the call up recently, and congratulations to him getting a non-roster invite to big league spring training. So he's been out there kind of vying for that third catcher spot between him right now, Chad Wallach, and Austin Romine. And Anthony Mulrine's one of the best defensive catchers, I think, in the minor leagues. But another reason, if he cracks the ball club, or the second he gets called up, I'm all aboard the Angels train, because that's an awesome dude and he works hard. Awesome story. But just from top to bottom here, man, I mean, we know the lineup is incredible. And with Rendon being healthy, I'm so excited to see what he's going to do. If he struggles, it'll be upsetting, obviously. Mm-hmm. But I mean, Rendon's Anthony Rendon. He's 31 years old. He'll be 32 probably by the time the season comes around. There's a lot of guys that can kind of explode, right? I mean, Brandon Marsh, you know how I feel about him as a prospect. You liked what you saw from him in the debut. He started to come alive at the end of the year. Joe Adell, if he puts it together, I mean, this could be a team that clicks on all cylinders, but there are a lot of ifs, and ifs. So, I mean, it could go any way, but it could go really damn well for them. And there's no doubt in that.
If they stay healthy, this is one of the best teams in the sport. Mm-hmm. But that is the question. If they stay healthy. Jonathan Villar signed with the Chicago Cubs, 1 year, $6 million deals, $6 million deal. He is departing from the New York Mets. He had 18 home runs last year. He sold 14 bags, finished with a 107 WRC plus. He was pretty good. It's a good pickup for the Cubs. I mean, he's not the sexiest addition in the world, but the Cubs are putting their team together, and I like the signing. I think he can do a lot. And for 1 year, $6 million, I think it's a pretty solid deal for the Cubs.
100%. And the terminology, like the phrase you just said there, was exactly what kind of came into my head when I was thinking about it. I'm like, the Cubs are piecing it together. Because we were saying when we did the GM episode, what does this look like? Mm-hmm. What does the Cubs being good look like? You can't just throw money at a bunch of dudes and build a good team. We think they might get Correa. Seiya Suzuki was a big splash too. Those are some good pieces, but you got to fill in the Jonathan Villar types as well. And I think Villar is going to get a lot of run. I think he's going to get 500, 550 plate appearances, because we saw him turn down more money for the Toronto Blue Jays, who were not going to promise him a starting job or even as much playing time as he wanted. So I have a feeling that he took this Chicago opportunity because they probably promised him a lot more playing time. It's going to be interesting to see how he fits in here, but I think there's going to be plenty of opportunity to give him opportunity between the outfield, between the infield. There's a few guys that we talked about as question marks, like Rafael Ortega. We'll see how Clint Frazier is. We'll see how even Nick Madrigal is, and Andrelton Simmons. And one of those guys is going to struggle. And God forbid one of them is going to get hurt. It's just the nature of it, right? Every team deals with injuries, and Villar is going to end up getting a lot of run here. And you mentioned the numbers. He was good last year for the Mets. I think he could be a pretty solid piece for them.
So you just said Carlos Correa is still possibility to the Cubs, and he's the team that both of us predicted he's going to. We're going to talk about Correa later, but I just don't know if the Cubs are the likely destination for Correa anymore. Look at how many infielders they have now. Nico Horner and Nick Madrigal. I know Nico Horner can play center field, but as of right now, he's slotted as the starting shortstop. They signed Andrelton Simmons. They signed Jonathan Villar. They have Frank Schwindel. They have Patrick Wisdom. Like, they have so many middle infielders and just infielders in general. I kind of find it hard to believe that they're now going to give Correa $300 or $350 million, because they're just signing all of these middle infielders. Like, I remember they were still in on Carlos Correa even after the Andrelton Simmons signing. Now they sign another infield depth piece in Jonathan Villar when they already have this incredible amount of infielders. I just don't see it for the Cubs anymore. I really don't.
Yeah, I wonder because we could also see them turn around and just say, hey, we're gonna trade Horner and we're gonna trade Wisdom. I don't think they'll trade Wisdom, but they might. Like, they could package some of these younger guys and say, all right, trade him out, get an outfielder, get an arm or something like that, and then bring in Correa. The problem is, though, is I would probably rather just get a few other pieces too. I agree with you from a standpoint of just what makes the most sense. If I'm building a team, I mean, this rotation is not going to work. This still isn't going to work, right? They added Steven Brault recently too. This is not a rotation. Stroman, Hendricks, Miley, Mills, Brault. I don't care about how good you could potentially make the offense isn't even that good yet. Like, I don't care what you can do. You just can't roll with this rotation. So I understand that hesitation. And I think there's a chance that, they might, potentially go another direction. I almost think, though, you have to make the other pickups that you're going to make, because you don't know if Correa is going to end up signing with you. And then if you put all your eggs in one basket on Correa, and then everybody else already signs, and by the time you find out Correa doesn't want to go to you, ultimately, now there's nobody left. So they could just be scooping up some of these pieces. VR can play all over the infield and the outfield, so I think they could justify it. I agree with the Simmons thing, because he's literally a shortstop and pretty much doesn't play any other position. But I think with VR, they're like, okay, we just need bats, and this guy can play all over. He played third last year. He played shortstop. He played second. I watched him play center field for the Marlins. It was horrible, but I mean, he did it. He's a good utility piece for them, a super utility guy. And, but I do wonder how in on Correa they are at this point. I think it's a very valid question to have.
For example, if they sign Carlos Correa and do nothing else, they don't add to the starting rotation or anything, they just sign Carlos Correa and they put out this team. How many games are they winning? I don't see them winning over 80.
We're cribbing the over every single time, I think. Every game I'm taking the over for the Cubs. If they sign Correa and no arms, yeah, they're not a good team. They're not a good team. I mean, they're better, they're more watchable, and it's a better product. And absolutely. Cubs fans have a reason to go to the ballpark, which is great. But if we're talking about competing, that team still has a lot of problems. And look, their farm system, they don't have that many arms knocking on the door. So yeah, I don't really see how they can continue to go towards this season without a pitcher, without adding another pitcher or two. It just doesn't really look like they have anybody that's going to come up and help them anytime soon, other than Caleb Killian, who still needs some more time. I don't really understand how they could not add arms at this point. Like, they've got to do something else.
They are the third best team in their division, and that division is arguably the worst in the entire sport. And if the Reds hadn't gone on a fire sale, and it's not, I wouldn't call it a fire sale. They're retooling or rebuilding, whatever Bob Castasell, the team, wants to portray it as, but they're trading away some of their best players. That's the fact of the situation.
They're worse.
Maybe I wonder if they don't trade anyone else away. Like, let's say they keep Castillo, they keep Molly, they keep Votto, they keep all these guys. Are they that much still worse than the Chicago Cubs? I don't know.
Yeah. And the Cubs, I think, look at it though, where they're saying, okay, these teams, the Reds are retooling, whatever it is, they're going to be worse this year. I think long-term they could be really good, but this year they're going to be worse. So I think they see it as a little bit more wide open than they thought it would be. And let's expedite this whole thing, but you can't just build through free agency. So it's going to be interesting to see how they decide to acquire arms. That being said, maybe they go and trade a Nico Hoerner or somebody else and go get that arm. I know Cubs fans really like Nico Hoerner and some of those other pieces, but they also have some prospects too that they could part with from the trades that they made during the season. They got some good pieces. They could potentially part with some prospects to go get an arm. The other thing I was thinking about, Pete, is with the Braves. Could Correa go to the Braves? I've read a little bit about some rumors there. The only reason I don't think it's going to happen, but the only reason why I think there's a just maybe minute possibility is they just cashed in, I think, on one of the best value deals we've seen in a while on Matt Olson. They have pretty much two of the best contracts you're going to find out there as well, with Ozzie Albies and Ronald Acuna. They don't really have anybody else that's super expensive in the short term. Austin Riley's under control. Ian Anderson's under control. What if AA just says, fuck it, and they do it? I was surprised to see them not throw money at Freeman. They got the value deal here with Olson. What if they just throw money at Carlos Correa? I haven't seen much about it, but I wouldn't totally rule it out with the pressure that the Mets are putting on the NL East right now. We're seeing the Phillies act. We're seeing the Phillies feel the pressure a little bit.
But
Are the Braves going to feel the pressure?
But we saw the Braves act, right? Re-signed Eddie Rosario, got Matt Olson to replace Freddie Freeman. This team's coming off a World Series ring.
Are they better? How much better are they?
I think they're at least the same or not worse, I would say. Like their rotation is still really strong. They added Colin McHugh to that already elite bullpen. They have Dansby Swanson at shortstop, who I use as a meter.
The definition of average.
That I use as a meter to evaluate other shortstops. This is what I put out on Twitter. If your shortstop is worse than Dansby Swanson, he's below average. If he's above Dansby Swanson, he's above average. But there is value to an average shortstop because the position is so loaded. And, being called an average shortstop versus being called an average player is not the same thing. Dansby Swanson is not an average player. He's an above average player, but at shortstop, when you're comparing the best players in the entire sport, he grades as average at that position. Do I think they're going to move off Dansby Swanson, give Carlos Correa 350 plus million? I just don't see it because there's no precedent for the Braves giving out $300 million contracts. I mean, you said it yourself. They're the kings of value. They get Acuna for $100 million. They get Albies for $35 million. They get Matt Olson for $168 million. Where's the $200 million contract rather than the $300 million contract?
I agree. Here's the thing, though. You sign Correa. Now you dump Swanson. That's $10 million off the books. You have Marcell Ozuna in a couple years. I think he's got 2 more years left on his deal, but they didn't have to pay him during his suspension. I'm pretty sure. Whatever his deal is, I think he's going to end up playing, but they're not going to pay him during, I guess, the rest of his suspension. What did he get? 20 games, which is ridiculous. But whatever that is, he's going to come off the books in the next year or two. Duvall as well. I don't know. I don't think it happens ultimately, but what other teams are there? Who else is getting Carlos Correa? Like that's why I'm trying to find one that like makes any sense.
And that's
the only one I could really find.
And we're going to talk about it in a little bit, but let's talk about another really exciting player. Corey Dickerson signed with the Cardinals.
I don't get that one, honestly. I really don't.
4th outfield depth piece, I guess.
He's not good on defense. He's a good bat. But they have a lot of really good bat. Like, is he better than Lars Nootbaar? I don't know. I don't think so. Lars Nootbaar is a better athlete. I think he's a little bit more dynamic and cooler and a better name.
Way better name. Corey Dickerson versus Lars Nootbaar.
It's not even
great
close.
Name versus a 20 grade name. Corey Dickerson versus Lars Nootbaar. It's not even close on the name value.
It's not even close on name value. Fans will like Lars more. And nothing against Corey Dickerson. Like, he was by all means a good dude. But yeah, I don't really see it. I guess it's just another depth piece for them and a lefty bat.
I will say Ryan Finkelstein wrote it up. I'm on our MLB free agency thread, which you guys have to follow along on justbaseball.com. It's updated through every move, a little bit of analysis, as well as, of course, posting the move. Cardinals are really right-handed dominant.
That's what I was going to say.
That's the thing. They needed a lefty bat. I could see him playing some DH for them. That's realistically what I could see, because when on, he can be a valuable bat.
Oh no, when he's hot, when he's rolling, I mean, he can swing. He's a tough guy to strike out, especially against righties. He's really darn good. He's just a finicky hitter that's very dependent on environment. And there's a lot of moving parts there, but yeah, they needed a lefty bat. I mean, you look at their starting lineup, really, they didn't have one, period. I really thought that Lars Nootbaar was going to be that guy. That's why it surprised me. But I guess they wanted to just have a backup plan in case Nootbaar wasn't able to rise to the occasion. I mean, we saw him for 58 games last year. He put up a 101 WRC plus, which is good for a rookie. But at the end of the day, if he struggles, they'd have no plan B. No other prospects that are really close that can swing it from the left side. Other than Nolan Gorman, who, isn't going to play the outfield anyways. And we don't know if he's going to be able to come in and contribute either. So I get it from that standpoint. But again, now this Cardinals team has a lot of bats. They got a lot of bats. If that's your bench bat, you're in great shape. Corey Dickerson is a great left-handed bat off the bench that you spot start here and there. I mean, that is a great guy to add there.
Yeah, if you're planning on having Corey Dickerson be your starting left fielder, starting right fielder opening day, we'd say that's lunacy and like your team is destined to fail. But maybe that's a little bit too harsh. But if he's a bench bat, it's a little harsh. If he's a bench bat, I think it's a good signing.
That's a great bench bat. It's a great bench bat. He's a veteran. He's been around the block. the guy was an all-star. I mean, he can swing it. And yeah, I like him. I like him as a bench bat. That's a good piece there.
So another guy who could be used as a bench bat, but will most likely, he could possibly start at second, could start at third. Josh Young went down with the injury, so they signed a backup infielder. That's Brad Miller with the Rangers, 2-year, $10 million contract. Brad Miller's your guy. Why do you like Brad Miller so much?
I don't, dude, there's something about his swing that is just like electric to me. I don't know. It's like he's old school, no batting gloves, like very, very simple setup. And just when he gets into one, it's just very sexy. I'm a big fan of Brad Miller. He's just an auto-generated name. He was a top overall pick, one of the most hyped up guys when he was drafted. And then everyone was like, bust, like just ripping him. And he's all of a sudden has carved out a nice career for himself. And I think he's like a 110 WRC plus guy, if I'm not mistaken. He can play all over the freaking diamond, like all over. Another great left-handed bench bat that if you are in a situation where you have to play him 400 plate appearances, you're not screwed, right? Like I always use the Marlins example of they were rolling Joe Panic out there for 300 plate appearances. They're screwed. You're getting negative production there. Brad Miller, if you're in a pinch and you got to roll him out, like that guy's going to give you at the worst league average production and an ability to play all over the infield or outfield.
He played 6 positions last year. He
played
left field. He played right field. He played third base. He played second base. He played first base. I guess that's only 5 positions. He didn't play center field. He didn't play catcher, and he didn't play shortstop. And of course, he didn't end up pitching for them. But he did hit 20 home runs playing all over the diamond. 2 years, $10 million. He's going to earn $6 million next year, $4 million in 2023. Another solid signing for the Rangers.
I love it. I love it. And especially with the uncertainty, like you mentioned with Josh Young, I love it. And again, they're a team that made some big additions, but still has some question marks. Like, what are they going to get out of Cole Calhoun in right field? Is he going to be healthy? What do they get out of Nick Solak in left? Like, if some of these guys are struggling, you can slot him into one of those spots. Even Nate Lowe. I like Nathaniel Lowe, and I know it goes by Nathaniel now, but that's a guy too that gets blown up by lefties a little bit. Like if some of these guys are being inconsistent, you've got an opportunity to kind of roam Miller around. But in the meantime, I think it's going to be a competition between him and Andy Ibanez at third base. And I could see those two guys platooning a little bit. And that's not bad to hold you over in the meantime.
Not bad to hold you over in the meantime. But a guy that the Dodgers decided, hey, we're going to hold him in the meantime until Max Muncy is healthy. Oh my God, Arm. The Dodgers signed Freddie freaking Freeman.
It was the fear, right?
6-year, $162 million deal. It makes sense. Freddie Freeman is from Southern California. The Dodgers have been on the forefront of this. We put him as the number 1 team that if the Braves aren't going to get him, the Dodgers are going to get him. And they got their guy to pair with Max Muncy at second base now. The only thing is what's going to happen with Gavin Lux, but the Dodgers know that they have a perennial 300 hitter and one of the best locker room clubhouse guys. You got an MVP, you got a World Series champion. The Dodgers are looking a lot like the Death Star right now.
Are we sure he's going to start over? Are we sure that he's going to start over Jake Lamb?
Not sure yet.
Because they also added Jake Lamb on March 14th. And Jake Lamb was supposed to be sick, and he might put it together. No, but Freddie Freeman is I mean, dude. From the Braves standpoint, we've explained it. It makes sense from their standpoint, like what they did. Cutthroat decision. But from the Dodgers standpoint, you're getting one of the best offensive players in baseball, right? For what is still a pretty cheap deal relative to what you're getting production-wise. I know he's a first baseman, but I mean, man, is this going to be one of the best offenses we've seen since maybe the Murderers Row Yankees type? Like this is a crazy team that, I mean, just listen to this, Peter. Mookie Betts, Trey Turner, Freddie Freeman, Justin Turner, Max Muncy, Will Smith, Chris Taylor, Cody Bellinger, AJ Pollock, and then off the bench, you've got Gavin Lux, Matt Beatty. I mean, like it's just stupid at that point. And then you also have Jake Lamb off the bench. This team is just insane. And I could see them honestly making another move or two. Ryan Noda as well, non-roster invitee. Look out for him. He is a masher. they've just got so many guys, and they've got some prospects that are knocking on the door too. Michael Busch is another one that can really swing it. I'm expecting them to make some moves. And then whatever they get out of Edwin Rios as well, he's going to be healthy and he'll be ready to go. I want to see a couple more arms added here, probably, especially in that bullpen. But overall, I mean, this is one of the scariest teams we've ever seen.
I think it depending on the Trevor Bauer situation, because Trevor Bauer, his extended leave has been extended again to, if I'm not mistaken, April 16th is the day that it has been extended to.
And we don't even know if the Dodgers want him back. Right?
I don't know if the Dodgers want him back. I think we have to assume that he's not going to pitch this year.
But I think that's the safest, or at least for the Dodgers. The safest assumption is that he's not pitching for the Dodgers. If he does, he does. But I don't think it's happening.
And so I said that the Dodgers have a top 5 rotation. They have a top 5 bullpen, and they have a top 5 farm system to go along with this offense. And the rotation, maybe you could say it's not top 5 right now with Walker Buehler, Julio Urias, and then Clayton Kershaw. It's a pretty good, strong 3. And then they add Dustin May, probably May, June time. I think you can make the argument that's the best 4 in the entire sport. And then you put Tony Gonsolin or Andrew Heaney at the end of it. David Price is a swingman. Another phenomenal rotation. And then you got Blake Treinen throwing 102-mile-an-hour turbo sinkers. You got, of course, Bruiser Gradle doing the same exact thing. Alex Vesia back there. They are the cream of the crop. They are the best team in baseball. They are the smartest. They spend the most money. They're exactly what every team in baseball, what every fan wishes their team looked like.
100%. But I will say this. Okay. Clayton Kershaw we don't know if he's going to be healthy, right? I mean, like, this guy had elbow issues last year, was shut down. If Clayton Kershaw goes down, now you're leaning on a Dustin May to come back. We don't know when he's going to come back. He's going to have to get built up. If Kershaw goes down, we're waiting on May. You're really leaning on Heaney and Gonsolin. Gonsolin has injury issues of his own, and Heaney was horrible last year in the second half, but we know that the metrics point towards a lot of better days ahead, and I think Heaney should be fine. Yeah. But there's a scenario where the rotation is a little bit thin, which is interesting. I think the Dodgers won't let that happen. That's why I just don't know if they're done. Like, is David Price now your 5? Are you, how bad of a situation is David Price as your 5? Like, this is where things get a bit interesting for me. But then again, you look at David Price, and he had a 4 ERA last year, 4.03 and a 4.23 FIP. So he was like, fine. He was fine. I do have my question though on that rotation. I'd like to see another one of the, like, I would have liked to see them get Matt Boyd. Like, I would like to see them make one of those signings, and I'd feel a lot better. That's not going to be a reason why I'm going to say the Dodgers aren't the best team in baseball. They're the best team in baseball. They could easily win 100 something games. Like, it's going to be nuts. I think they could win.
I like what you're doing. You're trying to poke a hole, because there could possibly be a hole. Like, let's say Kershaw doesn't stay healthy and Heaney is still the 5.5 ERA, instead of the, expected stats, they never kick in. Tony Gonsolin never really develops, but I think Tony Gonsolin probably will develop. I don't love him as an arm, but as a back end guy, filler to eat innings, he's great. And then Heaney, of course, I just think, and the Dodgers, they lost Corey Seager, they lost Max Scherzer, and they basically kind of replaced Freddie Freeman, or they replaced Corey Seager with Freddie Freeman. Offensively, not that far off from each other. And if you look at the WRC
that's the thing
numbers, but Corey Seager did play 95 games last year, so there is that.
Yeah, no, that's the thing I was going to say though too. Is like, everyone's like, oh my gosh, this Dodgers team is crazy. Yes, Seager only played 95, but like, when Seager was playing with that whole squad, it's about the same. Like, the production you're going to get from Freddie Freeman is pretty similar to what you would get from Corey Seager. So I think the lineup could loosely be similar, but here's the thing. Mookie Betts is not going to play the way he did last year. He's going to be a lot better. And Mookie Betts was good last year. Mookie Betts is going to be great this year. I think Cody Bellinger is going to be better this year. I think, the only guy that I think might take a step back is AJ Pollock as he continues to age a little bit.
But maybe not, because they're
maybe not. No, he could be. They don't need him to do that much, right?
But 9 hitter.
Yeah. And Max Muncy, how does he look when he comes back from injury? I think he'll be fine. Justin Turner, how does he age at 37?
Universal DH, though, he's going to rake. I mean, all these guys, and Will Smith's going to take a step forward, most likely again.
Yeah. So it's kind of like everything kind of evens out. Everything kind of evens out. And I think a big X factor, though, is Gavin Lux. What is Gavin Lux going to look like? Because you talk about the universal DH. Lux is going to be a roamer. He's going to play all over the infield. He's going to play potentially in the outfield as well. They're going to want to give Pollock days off. They're going to want to give Justin Turner days off. They need Gavin Lux to enable them to do that, right? Like, you got to have the confidence that, hey, we can give Gavin Lux 3 starts a week, and it's not going to be a devastating drop off in production from our starters. If Gavin Lux can provide that, this team is absolutely terrifying.
The thing is, I don't think Gavin Lux will be a Dodger anymore. I think he's going to be packaged with a prospect for a pitcher. I just don't know which pitcher, because you signed Freddie Freeman. Now you have Max Muncy, and you, of course, still have Chris Taylor being your roamer, who's the best probably roamer in the entire sport. So I don't even know where Gavin Lux is going to play. Like, he doesn't really slot in the outfield. He hasn't proved that he can play defense out here. The bat hasn't shown through where it's like, oh, you have to give him plate appearances. Like, he's had to prove it. And so far he hasn't proved it. And when you're the Los Angeles Dodgers, they don't screw around. They'll just flip him and then go get a 4 or a 3 in the rotation. So I don't even think Gavin Lux will be a Dodger come opening day.
Well, how much does Taylor? So here's my, I think that's a fair point, but how much does Taylor roam now? If Muncy is the DH potentially, Taylor plays second. You have Bellinger in center, Pollock in left, Betts in right. Then at that point, is Taylor roaming as much anymore, or is he manning second base more frequently? And then when you give the day off to Pollock, then maybe that's where Taylor slides to the outfield and you have Lux slide into a second base spot. The only reason why I think the Dodgers would have optimism in Lux is that he absolutely stinks against lefties. Like, he's atrocious against lefties, but you can deploy him only in really right-handed situations, right? Like, only against right-handed pitchers. And he was good against right-handed pitchers last year. Like, I'm pulling up the splits right now against righties. Yeah, he put up a 104 WRC plus, 260, 343, 404. If he takes another step up, he should be a really, really good player there. Against lefties, 54 WRC plus, 188, 286, 247. He's non-competitive. You can't even put him out there if he's giving you that. So I wonder if they're just deploy him against righties. But if a team still values him as like that same value of a top 100 guy, because at the end of the day, he is still just 24 years old, which is wild, and like a young 24. I mean, there could be a scenario where you're packaging him for a good arm. And I don't think the Dodgers will feel that like they're missing something by trading him away. So I could see either happening 100%. Nothing would surprise me.
Let's switch from the best team to the team that we have no idea what they are doing. The Colorado Rockies signed Chris Bryant to a 7-year, $182 million deal. I led off yesterday's podcast with a minute blurb, just telling you guys, hey, he signed with the Rockies. We're going to analyze it on Friday. And so I came back and I looked up more of it. Obviously, they've changed general managers, right? This is a new regime. The old general manager who traded away Nolan Arenado is not the same general manager who signed Chris Bryant. My thing is, you had the best tweet in the world to follow that up. And I'm just going to leave it to you. Like, they get Chris Bryant, and then what? Like, what are you doing? You're in a division where you're easily the 4th best team in it. Maybe even the 5th if the Diamondbacks rookie outfield prospects really show up this year. Like, what's going on?
Yeah. It's I told you guys in the staff chat, I'm so in on the Rockies this year. Like, this is something I'm not going to let go the whole year. I'm fully in on because they are I always say, so Jeff Conine on Outside the Box with Jeff Conine, every time we're on the podcast here, he always says, at the end of the day, we're entertainers. And we forget that a lot, but they are at the end of the day, like, it's entertainment. The Rockies are freaking entertainers. Like, this is a stand-up comedy show. Like, I don't even know what they're doing. Like, listen to this lineup, dude. Raimel Tapia, Chris Bryant, Charlie Blackmon, CJ Cron, Ryan McMahon, Brandon Rogers, Sam Hilliard, Elias Diaz, and Jose Iglesias. And the funniest thing, too, is they're still in on Albert Pujols. If they get Albert Pujols, I'm buying season tickets. I don't know. I'm buying a package. We're flying out there like once every couple of weeks, and we're going to these games because this team is hilarious. They also added Chad Kuhl. So now they have a rotation of German Marquez, Kyle Freeland, Antonio Sensatella, Austin Gomber, and Chad Kuhl. And then they went out and got Alex Colomé, which is hilarious. Daniel Bard retired for like 4 years, came back, throws 100. He's in their bullpen. Julius Chassin, remember that dude? Yeah. He's on their squad. I thought he retired. That is on their team. They might bring him back. If they do, I want them to just clown at this point, just clown. But my tweet, for those who might not be on Twitter, I was saying, like, this fills a really important need for the Rockies. Now all they need is 5 bats, a few arms, some bullpen arms, and a better farm system. And I mean, it's like kind of true. Like, what was the point? And I'm never going to shame teams for spending. I don't want this to be mistaken as us shaming them. We're here for it. We're just having fun with it because it doesn't make any freaking sense. Like, I like teams that suck spending money and putting a good product on the field. It's good for the game, right? And this product is better with Chris Bryant, right? It's a more watchable team with Chris Bryant on it. But what are they doing? Like, at that point, it's just like, why are you spending $180 million for your team to still suck?
Here's an example. I'm not going to clown the Nolan Arenado deal. I won't. All right. Different GM. That was his problem. Moving over, new GM. All right, new GM. Why don't you re-sign Trevor Story, huh? Why are you not in on Trevor Story? Like, are you going for it or you're not going for it? Is Trevor Story not valuable to you anymore, but Chris Bryant is now? What's going on? I've looked up sources. I've read articles. You know, we even have articles on justbaseball.com about it. I even wrote an article that's available now on justbaseball.com making the case for Chris Bryant to win the MVP. Not that he will win the MVP, but that plus 4,000 is great odds. And that plus 2,000 compared to where he is, you know, with Starling Marte and JT Realmuto and Paul Goldschmidt, just like he's around that. Could that be a good value play? Of course, he could hit 300 with 40 bombs in Colorado and they win 80 games. And like, there's precedent because Larry Walker was the last Colorado Rocky to win the MVP. And like, he hit 330 with 49 bombs and the Rockies finished 83 and 79 that year. So you don't need a winner in Colorado to win the MVP. But regardless, what's happening? I mean, if you're not going to sign Trevor Story, then what are we doing?
Well, and also like Jose Iglesias. Do we know do they know how bad he was in the second half last year?
He never hit in his entire career.
Except for that 2020 season where, as the kids would call him, he was a BABIP merchant. You know, and everything he hit went through, and it was a shortened season, so he was able to just live it.
I like it.
I mean, this guy, like, he was not good in the second half. He was even worse over the last couple months. I think he hit 193 in August. I think he finished strong over the last couple weeks, but like, I don't understand. Maybe they're thinking that, okay, this guy never hits. He's a good defender. And now in Coors, he'll be an average offensive player with good defense, but they need guys that can rake like Chris Bryant. I am very excited about Brendan Rodgers. I know we talk about CJ Cron from like a fantasy standpoint is great. I mean, the guy produces, he's built for Coors Field because of the ability to make contact. I think Bryant's going to be similar as well. Ryan Tapia is fine. I still think they need one more outfield bat. They need one more outfield bat pretty bad.
Their infield looks pretty good.
Their infield's not the worst thing.
No, it's pretty good. It's not bad.
It's not the worst thing. Charlie Blackmon's still fine. I don't love him.
He's on the end, and he's a terrible defender.
I think they're
buyouts the worst buyouts above average in the entire sport in right field. Like bad. But he's going to play a lot of DH for them. 78 wins? Like what? I mean, are they like, did they finish with a better record than the Chicago Cubs?
Well, what I think ends up happening is Connor Joe ends up taking over in the outfield, and Connor Joe's pretty good.
He's kind of good.
That's a great question. Do they finish with more wins than the Chicago Cubs? This rotation, man, is not that far off from
better. It's better. It's better than the Cubs.
It might be better. Like German Marquez is great. And everyone's gonna look at the ERA and be like, oh, well, their ERAs are all in the fives. If you put the Cubs rotation at Coors, geez, besides Stroman, it would be so bad.
Herman Marquez is a top 20 pitcher if he's not at Coors.
I agree. Freeland has had stints where he is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Senzatella is really good there too. And Freeland was back to his form kind of over the last 2 years, I thought. I mean, especially last season, I thought he looked really solid.
Gomber's solid.
Gomber's good. I always said that was the only good piece they got out of that deal. Eleris Montero is all right. Gomber can pitch. That rotation is right there with the Cubs. I'm sorry. I think it is.
And you're talking about
Jack's gonna rip us for that. But like Alec Mills, dude, like I'm sorry.
I agree. And you were talking about Austin Gomber deal. That's one of the prospects that the Rockies got in the Nolan Arenado deal that they also gave $50 million to. But we're not going to compare that. Different GMs. But then, all right, same GM. What's wrong with Trevor Story? But we're not going to be able to solve the Rockies on this podcast, and we'll probably never be able to solve the Rockies as many podcasts as we do. But we're going to keep trying because it's so incredibly interesting.
I'm working on it every night. I've got a whole board. I've got lines connected. I'm gonna figure out what they're doing.
Then we're gonna try and solve the Cubs too. What they're doing, I don't know what they're doing either. I mean, I frankly don't know.
So I ask you this, and I want to leave this open to the listeners as well. You can tweet at us at the Just Baseball account or at my personal Twitter or at Peter's. Whose jersey should I buy? Because I am fully in on the Rockies. Who should I buy? Which jersey should I buy for the Colorado Rockies? Because I'm not a jersey guy, except if it's for a bit, and I'm all in on this bit. I love the Rockies. Whose jersey am I getting? Don't say Chris Bryant. That's lame as shit. Anybody else, I'm in. But not somebody that's going to be gone after a year. Like, can we find a little bit of a balance here? Let me know. For the most replies we get, whoever comes up the most, I'll take that jersey. I'm leaning at the moment. I'm thinking CJ Crone, but
dude, you have to get a jersey that just says Joe on the back, and it's
kid
Joe just says Joe.
That's. I feel like that might end up being the favorite, but I'm looking forward to anybody replying with any choices there because I'm looking at the free agent market right now for Rockies jerseys.
All right, time to speculate. Let's talk Carlos Correa and let's bring the Orioles back into the discussion, which is a crazy sentence I just said. Let's talk Carlos Correa and bring the Orioles into the conversation. Do you know why, Aram?
No.
They offered Carlos Correa, this is reported, a 10-year, $300 million deal. That's what they offered to Carlos Correa. Can you believe it? Because if you look at the Orioles, they are a team that, I mean, you could tell me shortstop prospects, not a ton. Everywhere else, tons of prospects. They want to be really good. They don't really have anybody on the payroll. But then my thinking is, how's their last big signing gone with Chris Davis? I mean, but I love the Orioles for doing it. Even the Rays offered Freddie Freeman that type of contract too. But the Baltimore Orioles are now in on Carlos Correa. Thoughts?
I almost wonder if they just knew that Correa wouldn't take 300 and they just wanted everybody to see like, oh yeah, we tried. We almost got Correa. We went for it. Like, I don't understand what the angle would be here. Here's one thing. I could talk myself into it making some sense from this standpoint. You talk about the prospects that are on the cusp. Unfortunately, Adley Rutschman's season's going to be, the start for him is going to be delayed at like a few weeks, maybe a month maximum with an injury, but he'll be fine. Yeah. So you have Cedric Mullins, who I still think a trade is incredibly unlikely. So you have Cedric Mullins in center field, who we think, could be one of the better outfielders in the game if he continues to trend the way. We all love Ryan Mountcastle here at Just Baseball. He can swing it. Trey Mancini's a good player. Santander is good. I mean, I just named 4 young, besides Mancini, who's 30, like young, good players. Of course, Adley on the way, Grayson Rodriguez on the way, some other prospects that aren't too far off. The rotation is just paper thin, though.
Yeah.
I mean, Peter, listen to this. John Means, who is a good arm, but John Means, Jordan Lyles, Bruce Zimmerman, Keegan Aiken, and Zach Lawther. First of all, that's 4 lefties. That can't be the rotation, right? Like, who are we missing here?
There's a possibility you just named after John Means, you just named the 4 leaders in ERA except the opposite way.
Yes. Like this is an atrocious rotation. And I guess they're looking at it and they're saying, okay, but yeah, we're signing him to a 10-year deal. So we'll be good in a few years. Okay. I guess. I mean, the offense, I can see that. I mean, that you add Correa to this offense. Austin Hayes was even good last year. You add Correa to this offense. This team is actually it's a good offensive team. I'd put them right in the middle of the pack. I mean, team. It's a good offensive team, and with more prospects on the way that aren't far off.
Overs
for sure. But what's your plan pitching wise? Do you add G-Rod in there?
And they have a terrible
DL Hall, you hope, maybe. But I guess they're playing the long game there, and they're saying we'll sign Correa to a 10-year deal. And Correa said himself, though, didn't he, that I'm okay with like waiting out a rebuild. So that's the only way that I could justify it is they're giving themselves 2 to 3 years to piece together the rotation. From that standpoint, I guess I get it because Mullins is controllable, Mountcastle is controllable, Santander is controllable. They could extend Mancini for cheap. Hayes is controllable, and then the other prospects would obviously be controllable. So I get it from that standpoint. But if you're at 300, then you might as well fork up another 20 or 30 and just do it.
That's what I'm saying, dude. Think about it. Like and the reason why I bring this up, and we have to bring it up, but this is the biggest deal that's been offered to Carlos Correa so far, at least reported. Tigers offered him 10 for 275. Yankees, I guess, were under that $300 million threshold. And now the Orioles are at 10 for 300. But this is just what makes me think he's going to return to the Astros on a 1-year deal. I think Scott Boras is going to be like, okay, you want to take this 10-year deal with the Orioles? Go ahead. Or what we can do, and I was speculating this with Jack, and I think we were speculating with it too. If he signs a 1-year deal with the Houston Astros, because Boras, of course, and we've talked about this on multiple pods, the switching of the agents, Boras won't get his big agent cut, might convince Carlos Correa to take a 1-year, $45-50 million deal with the Astros. And then, you know who's a free agent next year? Trey Turner.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah,
the old flip-flop.
A Dodger.
Yeah,
that's what this, of course, again, speculation, but that's just what it feels like is going to happen. He's going to re-sign with the Astros. You know, all the buzz in Houston is that he's coming back. He wants to be back. I know he loved Houston. They loved him. Dusty Baker was even saying that he'd love to have Correa back. The whole team would too. That's just what it seems like is going to happen. And then he's going to sign with the Death Star.
Well, if the Astros get a window here, you know, on a 1 year, I think they'll go crazy.
They'll go crazy.
Average annual value, they'll go nuts. One last thing on the Orioles point, I think they feel really bullish about their offensive potential because we talk about Adley is like Adley has MVP upside, right? So if Adley is an all-star catcher for you too, Grayson Rodriguez, you know how I feel. I think he's an ace. They probably feel like, okay, we just need to add a couple arms and we're okay. And again, a DL Hall is special. And they've got a lot of assets there with that system. The more we just kind of have this conversation, the more I kind of lead myself to, I understand a little bit what their perspective is here. If they do that, I want to see them start to be a little bit more aggressive, though. Don't be afraid to trade a couple of these prospects for another arm. Or trade some of your hitting prospects for some pitching prospects, like go prospect for prospect deal. The way the Marlins did Zach Gallen for Jazz Chisholm, right? Like that was a situation where the D-backs really needed an arm and they did that. Like I could see the Orioles doing something along those lines. It would be so good for baseball if Carlos Correa went to the Orioles. We're seeing small market teams or teams that have been bad add these star players. It's galvanizing. I would love to see that happen. I just still can't believe the Orioles did this. This was a team that was 2 years ago asking players to defer their $4 million contracts over a couple of years so that they didn't have to pay them because money was so tight.
Oh no.
I don't understand what's happening.
Oh no. All right. Let's talk about another shortstop who has been garnering a little bit of buzz, but not a ton of buzz. Trevor Story. The Red Sox have checked in. Now that they lost out on Freddie Freeman, they are now one of the heavy pursuers for Trevor Story. We know that the Twins are one of the heavy pursuers. We've heard the Angels. We've heard the Phillies. We've heard possibly the Cardinals. I have no idea where he's going. If you put a gun to my head, I'm telling you the Twins, because it seems like the Twins just make all the sense in the world there.
I love him to the Twins.
But the Red Sox have checked in. But remember when we were speculating, there was a team that offered him a 9-figure deal that he turned down because they asked him to switch positions. And I told you I thought that might have been the Red Sox. I don't know if this is the Red Sox re-engaging, saying possibly now that we didn't get Freddie Freeman, we're kind of going to do whatever Trevor Story says, or if this is the first time checking in on him. I'm kind of unsure, but it is clear that the Red Sox are in on Trevor Story.
You know how much better this, and I know Red Sox fans I'd probably push back on this, or maybe not. I don't know. I know Colby wouldn't push back on this. Do you know how much better the Red Sox are with Xander Bogaerts playing like second base?
I know.
And Trevor Story playing short.
Not
better. Only just because they add Trevor Story, that if Trevor Story is a slightly above average defender, the improvement from Bogaerts, who is well below average, to slightly above average, and then adding the production, because right now, who's your second baseman? Christian Arroyo?
No. I mean, yes, but no.
Yeah, like shouldn't be. So you're replacing Christian Arroyo's offensive production.
You're replacing. He was okay. He's okay, but he's not a starting second baseman for like a World Series team.
Yeah, he's just not. And you're replacing Xander Bogaerts' defense with I know Story struggled last year a little bit, but like presumably above average defense. I just think it's right there. We just saw the freaking Braves tell Freddie Freeman to pack his bags for a baseball move. You don't need to tell Xander Bogaerts to pack his bags. You just have to tell him to move across the infield, and it will make things 10 times better. And I know people are like, well, Bogaerts isn't a bad defender. He is very smooth with it. He's got great hands. His range is terrible. That's where it's really an issue. That's really the issue. And that's why it's deceptive.
Well in these defensive stats, because his range.
No, and he doesn't move. Like if you watch it, he just doesn't move that well. And his arms, fringy. If you put him at second, and I know this just won't happen, but that would make them so much better.
Could happen.
And if reluctance to move Xander from shortstop is the reason why, I mean, that's going to be the difference between the Braves and the Red Sox. Is the Braves can be ruthless, and the Red Sox, they might just say, Xander, you stay at short, you do what you want. That's fine, but there's a reason why the Red Sox have the highest BABIP allowed in baseball. There's a reason. It's because that left side of the infield is a turnstile. Between Rafael Devers, that tells you I'm a Marlins guy. Jesus. I'm probably going to be the only person in the history of the world to call Rafael Jose and not Jose Rafael. With Rafael Devers and Xander Bogaerts on the left side of the infield, I mean, there's a reason why so many ground balls got through last year. It's something that they're giving up big time right there.
So let's move on to a guy who has been attached to those Marlins, Aram, but you just don't see it. And I know we talked about this last time, but we got another report that the Marlins are still in. So I got to ask you, have you heard anything about Nick Castellanos, possibly the Marlins? But what we do know is that the Phillies and the Padres are most likely the front runners, but the Marlins are checking in. So I want to ask you, is that for real?
So the latest I've heard is that anything is on the table. They've circled back. And I think something that works in the Marlins' favor is that Florida state income tax, is not a factor. So you can, if it's between, let's say he's thinking about going to, let's say the West Coast in California, and he signs a $150 million deal. I don't know exactly what the percentages are, but he's taking home another $8 to $10 million. I
lived in California. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. Right?
It's a lot.
It's a lot. He's taking home another good chunk of money coming to Miami. So he's a hometown kid too. He wants to play in Miami. That's something Barry Jackson
wants to play in Miami.
He does. That's something Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald reported. That's something that, I've heard as well. That's something that Craig Mish is confirmed as well. So, I'm not saying he's going to go out here and take a pay cut. He's a Scott Boras client, but maybe he takes the same amount, or maybe he takes, because he knows he's going to have that money saved in taxes. Maybe he takes a few million less. So I think the Marlins are doing their due diligence. I just wonder, and this might be, I always said with the Marlins fans right now, because some Marlins fans are divided on this. I think beggars can't be choosers.
Agreed.
With the Marlins situation though, Peter, I mean, would it concern you as an outsider? Like the outfield defense is the real concern that people have. Jesus Sanchez is young and pretty in the outfield. Then you would be putting Avi Garcia in center. and who's fast, but he's not a great defender. And then you'd put Castellanos in right, who's not a good defender. So that would arguably be one of the worst defensive outfields in baseball and one of the most cavernous outfields in baseball. The good news is the Marlins do have a good pitching staff that gets a lot of ground balls. But is that a deterrence for you, or are you like, screw it, the Marlins need offense too badly?
So I think I'm almost in the middle there.
That's where I'm at.
Exactly, because I think if they sign Nick Castellanos, they are a better team than yesterday.
Yes,
like they are better. They're better offensively. You just signed a big time bat, one of the big time bats on the free agent market. But you're right, to the defense. And also the Marlins especially are in one of the biggest ballparks in the entire sport. That's another thing. You're not in Yankee Stadium where maybe Nick Castellanos has to cover about 20 feet in right field. No, you're in Marlins Park, Lone Depot, where it's vast and it's huge. He's going to be running one out. Universal DH. But I know you want to use Garrett Cooper in that spot. Like you want to use some of your other bats. So then what happens with Nick Castellanos? So if they sign Nick Castellanos tomorrow, good deal. But is he the perfect fit? Because there are two trade pieces, one in the NL Central, one in the AL East, that make way more sense. That's Cedric Mullins for the Orioles. That's Brian Reynolds for the Pirates. Brian Reynolds, apparently, they're asking Seattle for Julio Rodriguez. They're asking the Marlins for everyone. So it's like he's probably not going to get traded, but Cedric Mullins maybe. But also Cedric Mullins has been connected to the Phillies as well. They're looking for an outfielder. Do you see the possibility of Cedric Mullins getting traded? Because Nick Castellanos, like we said, Phillies, Padres will wrap with Cedric Mullins possibly getting traded. So I know you said probably not, but maybe.
I think there's a possibility because I think it makes more sense for the Orioles to trade Cedric Mullins than it does for the Pirates to trade Brian Reynolds.
Imagine they trade Cedric Mullins and then sign Correa. Like, dude, just pull a Rockies.
But here's the thing, though, because I agree that would be nuts if they did it with the Phillies. With the Marlins, it might just make sense because the Marlins can give the Orioles exactly what they freaking need, right? Max Meyer would be in that deal, presumably,
Absolutely.
Right? Instantly, I mean, you don't have to call him up, but he's pretty damn close to big league ready and becomes your best pitcher tomorrow. He's their ace. He's their ace.
Do not slander John Means. He's the best pitcher in baseball. No, but it makes sense though.
Means is a great arm, but when he's your ace, you're in trouble.
But just be careful. Be careful with the slander.
I will tread very lightly. When you would then have Max Meyer, you would have Grayson Rodriguez right there too, who would be their ace once he's up. Yeah. And then John Means, that's three legit arms that, I really like. And that wouldn't just be Max Meyer, right? They'd probably get another pitcher. Maybe even get Eliezer, who would slot right into the rotation as well. And then some other solid prospect pieces as well. Then you sign Correa. They have outfielders. They have outfield prospects too that are close to big league ready. I wonder, because for the Pirates, it makes no sense. They're so far off, and he's under control for 4 years, as Brian Reynolds. From the Orioles standpoint, that could jumpstart this whole thing for them a little bit. I wonder. I don't think any other team in baseball can really offer them that. The Marlins have some trade history with the Orioles. I could see it. I would, and that's not just me being a homer. If anything, I'm more of a pessimist when it comes to the Marlins. I just think that would make sense for the Orioles in this situation. For the Marlins, they would have to overpay, and I think it's worth it because I would rather have Mullins than Castellanos. He brings you defense and center. He's a left-hand bat. He's a stud, and I just think it makes way more sense. But like you said, to wrap up on the Castellanos thing, the Marlins are a better team with Castellanos. I know people are like, but the money. If they're spending money, don't worry about it. It's not yours.
Spend money. What do you not want them to when you're just waiting on pitching prospects to?
It's not going to be so bad.
Exactly.
No, but you're right. You're right.
Do you want to win? What do you want to do? What do you want to do, Marlins fans? Are we just going to sit here? What do you want to do?
They want to wait for the perfect guy. It's like the 40-year-old guy that's never going to get married because no girl's good enough, but they're going to complain that they're not married. You got to say,
I love Marlins Twitter, but what are you guys doing? You're all insane. You're all lunatics. All of you. Don't you want to win?
I don't get it. No, they're masochists. They're actual masochists.
I hope they're listening. Eli,
they are.
Tell your team.
Although the last thing I'll say is the funniest middle finger to Derek Jeter if they signed Nick Castellanos.
Oh,
because
yeah.
he was so pissed. He was so pissed that they didn't want to pay him.
Oh, I would love that for the Marlins. And we make fun of each other being homer, me with the Yankees, Jack with the Chicago teams, you with your Marlins, but that's not a homer thing that you're talking about. That makes a ton of sense for the Orioles, and it makes a ton of sense for the Marlins. That makes sense. I think you could also go the Phillies, of course, but that move, Orioles jump starting their rebuild with a bunch of influx of arms. If they're going to trade Cedric Mullins, you have to get like all arms. It's going to be like 4 arms in the deal. Then Orioles are cooking. They signed Correa. I think he's going to go to Houston, but things are coming. And
that's a fun team. That's a fun team.
That's a fun team. And
their ETA shifts to like 2024 to be competitive. Like
the problem is
totally shifts.
Their division is an absolute buzzsaw, but if they, they could compete. So we'll see. But we're going to continue to cover all of these moves on the Just Baseball show, which you can find it on justbaseball.com. Next week, top 10 catchers is coming.
Oh, God.
That's gonna be an absolute banger. Salvi Perez, number 1.
Yeah.
Can you imagine TikTok?
Well, I'm actually in a framing league.
Yeah. Jonah Heim, number 2.
Jonah Heim is the top pick.
And so we'll continue to update you guys. Of course, follow along on justbaseball.com. Get your Just Baseball merch, which you can find in the episode link description. I'm rocking my Just Baseball t-shirt right now. Aram is, of course, not wearing any of his own company's merch because he hates What are you doing? What are you doing? They're comfortable.
I don't know. Laundry day.
You're literally in your room. You're in your room in Florida.
Laundry day.
Go get your Just Baseball merch in the episode description. Give us a follow on Twitter. We're also down there, and we're going to continue to update you guys on social at Just Baseball Fans, of course, on Instagram and TikTok, on the website, on YouTube, everything. Anything else before we part on?
I just feel like Carlos Correa is just never going to sign. Like, does it feel like he's going to pick a team?
What if he goes to Japan?
Just says fuck it. A team in Japan gives him 400.
Yeah, $600 million for Carlos Correa. It just becomes a giant there.
I just can't wait for the Carlos Correa is a blank episode. That's my final thoughts.
Carlos Correa to the Diamondbacks. And with that, thank you, everybody.